So this new One Piece chapter was one of the shortest One Piece chapters of all time. I think it was actually third or top 3 shortest chapters in the One Piece story. But you know what's funny? It's probably one of my favorite One Piece chapters I've ever read. It's because it was very calming. It was very calming reading the story of Kuma and how he meets Monkey D. Dragon, the most wanted man in the entire world, and seeing the Revolutionary Army and the build-up, because this is something that I've always said is poetic, yo. We saw in the beginning of Egghead Island, Vegapunk was speaking to Dragon, talking about his future death. We seen Ohara and the remnants and seeing Dragon and check what we saw living and whatnot. And now we're seeing the whole Saturn, Bonnie, Kuma, God Valley, and then of course when it comes to Dragon's father, Monkey D. Garp, and God Valley and all that. And now we're transitioning to, of course, Dragon and his story with Revolutionary Army. And then of course we have Gear 5th Luffy, Sunga, Nika, who's in a very bad state right now. So it's just amazing to see how Oda's tying it all together. So yeah, it was a really short chapter, and we got one of the biggest confirmations we've had in the One Piece story in history. Like, I made countless videos talking about how Monkey D. Dragon is part of this faction formerly, but to see it confirmed, it just hits different, guys. I'll tell you right now, confirmation is everything. So let's just dive into this One Piece chapter right away. So like Vegapunk stated to Dragon earlier in the Egghead Island arc, in this flashback, Dragon states it himself that they're lacking funds, so they're only gonna help people who already want to rebel. So it's pretty much they're assisting the rebellion rather than actually initiating rebellion. That's how they were moving. And then of course we see that he's trying to drill weapon training into his Revolutionary Army. And then Kuma asks, where did you learn so much about weapon training? And this is where we get the confirmation I was talking about earlier. Dragon replies, I spent some time in the Navy. Unfortunately, I found no justice there. Now you have to understand, the Dragon former Marine theory has been going on for so long. From Akainu saying Dragon's son, Dragon's son, Dragon's son, to Dragon being the most wanted man, son of Monkey D. Garp, the hero of the Marines. You think the hero of the Marines' son is not going to try to join the Marines as well too? Look how hard Garp tried to make Ace and Luffy, his grandsons, into the Marines. I know people are like, oh, Ace not Garp's grandson, of course, but I'm gonna be honest with you, the fact that Ace from his birth only known Garp as his grandfather is like, I just consider him his grandfather, even though blood is not related. Like, it's like Luffy and Ace, they're not brothers blood related, but they're still related. But when you look at the Marines, you have a kind with absolute justice. You have like Greenbow recently, it was revealed that he has determined justice. Like, there's so many justices in the Marines. And the fact that Dragon says he found no justice there was very interesting. So I thought that was very cool in this chapter, revealing that Dragon used to be a Marine. I think there's going to be so many cool things we're going to see when it comes to Dragon. He was 17 years old during God Valley. So I could see situations of Dragon, because he's around the same age as Kizaru and Akainu. I could see Dragon have some interactions with Kizaru and Akainu. And maybe even Aokiji, because we do know Garp went crazy when he made the Revolution Army. He's like, yo, my son made the Revolution Army to Aokiji. But I think Aokiji's a little bit younger than Akainu, Kizaru, and Dragon, so he might not be a part of that. But still, at the end of the day, I thought it was super hype. I want to see Garp training Dragon. I think Garp trained Dragon as well as he trained Kobe and as he trained Aokiji. I think Garp's true #1 pupil is his actual son. I think he trained him from until he left the Marines. I think Garp really trying to make Dragon the next sort of coming of a monster. And you know what's funny? Garp and Dragon are pretty close in age compared to Dragon and Luffy, if that's something that... And remember, Ivankov said in this chapter, Marine or Revolutionary, he's a man determined to help others. And that's really important. That really says a lot about Dragon. Ivankov is the #1 ally to Dragon, like the first person who made the Freedom Fighters. And Kuma says, you can rely on me. And Dragon says, you won't regret joining us. Now that's a very interesting statement. You won't regret joining us. It's obviously foreshadowing Dragon doing something in chapter 1100 during the end of Egghead Island. I think honestly, because the Egghead Island incident is going to be one of the greatest incidents in the One Piece story, I think you have two things you can do. You can have Luffy in his Nika form, have Kuma and Bonnie witness that and have such a feel-good moment against Saturn because of the Saturn being a main enemy during the God Valley incident. Or you can even have Luffy have a moment, Gear 5th Luffy versus Saturn, but Dragon come out of nowhere with the Revolutionary Army and go up against all the Marines and have a complete W for the Revolutionary Army, winning against Kizaru, Saturn, a bunch of Vice Admirals, getting defeated by Straw Hat Luffy and the Yonko Alliance, combined with the Revolutionary Army led by Monkey D. Dragon. I think that would be so insane. It'll be the first time that Luffy and Dragon ever meet. I think that's definitely a possibility you could do. It just depends if Oda wants to do it or not. But as a fan, 13-page chapter, I'm gonna keep it real, guys. 13th chapter, this chapter still left a lot in the future when it comes to theories and discussions, and we're gonna see a lot of that. I'm telling you guys right now, I'm back to daily uploads. Then of course we see 14 years ago. Now the Revolutionary Army has been pretty much for years been doing what they've been doing. Kuma's 33 years old and he's returning to his Sorbet Kingdom. And of course we see in the other faction the captain of the East Revolutionary Army, which is Jinny. Now that's interesting because now there's a new captain of the East Army, Bello Betty. But at this time it was Jinny or Jinny, whatever her name is pronounced. We'll see in the anime. But yeah, Jinny is excited to see Kuma again, and she's the captain of the East Army, like I said. She's eating meat. I'll be honest, she kind of reminds me of like Luffy, but we all know that Bonnie reminds us of Luffy. So she's obviously Bonnie's mother because of what this chapter pretty much confirmed. And I do gotta say this: we see someone enter with their foot. Someone enters with their foot. And I think it's a strong individual because she's the captain of the East Army. She has to be powerful herself. I think it's a strong individual that kidnapped her, guys. Just from what we saw in this moment, honestly. And then, of course, 14 years ago, we see Dragon at Baltigo, and he has his famous tattoo. Now, you guys have to understand that tattoo. We have to know when he got it. Is it related to a mythical Zoan Delver ability? Is it related to a significant moment? All we know is he didn't have it when 22 years ago, but he did have it 14 years ago. So it's in between 22 years ago and 14 years ago. It's around the time that Luffy is born, actually, if you think about it. So I wonder where each Oda is going to go with there. But yeah, Dragon's sitting in Baltigo, and here's the news of his, of course, East Army captain Jinny being captured. And they talk about the enemy took us by surprise. And we see Dragon with his tattoo. And of course, this flashback is very, very good right now. So I'll give you guys my theory right now. I think the possibilities is it could be Akainu. We know Akainu had that moment with Jewelry Bonnie pre-time skip. When it comes to even recently when he was fighting Kuma, he thought about Jewelry Bonnie. And it seems like he has some history there. It could be Kizaru because, of course, the Vegapunk and all that stuff. And he mentioned Bonnie and how he doesn't want to pretty much do something because of Kuma. And also not trust the pirates during the Rayleigh interaction. Or it could be Figure and Garland, for all we know. It could be Figure and Garland, and he could get a more hype because he's in this arc as well. But I think, honestly, what would be cool is if the Gorosei himself came and took her. If the Gorosei himself, because we know he has a vendetta against Buccaneer Race. If Saturn is the one, that could definitely make Egghead Island better. But all in all, I think it's probably going to be Akainu for some reason. I don't know what it is. I could be wrong, but I just think it's going to be Akainu. But next chapter is probably going to wrap up these Kuma flashback. And I'll tell you guys right now, I don't know about you guys, but as a fan of One Piece, probably one of the top 5 flashbacks. Top 5 flashbacks in the One Piece story. You guys all know how I love Kozuki Oda's flashback, Nolan's flashback, Fisher Tiger and Otahime's flashback. Those are some of my favorite flashbacks. And then, of course, the Straw Hats when it comes to Nico Robin and Brooks and Sanji's. Like, those are some amazing ASL flashbacks. There's countless flashbacks in the story that I thoroughly enjoy. One Piece is known for its flashbacks. But I'm going to say right now, Kuma's flashback is top 5, and it's probably going to wrap up next chapter. Now, I thought it was pretty cool when Dragon and Ivankov actually pulled up during this chapter, when they pulled up to overthrow the kingdom of the Sorbet Kingdom and their evilness. And Ivankov is talking about how he recommended someone, of course, that being Kuma. And Dragon's like, I definitely want to see if this guy is who you pretty much recommended. He's legit. But, you know what's funny? It just confirmed that Dragon didn't know Kuma, and Ivankov met Dragon after God Valley incident. So confirmation that Dragon wasn't there during the God Valley incident. I thought the only way that Dragon could have been there was if he was a 17-year-old Marine. Well, it's not confirmation because Dragon could have not interacted with Ivankov and Kuma, but we know that there's no interaction between those characters. But it's most likely that Dragon wasn't there in God Valley, which as a fan, I really wanted him to be there. I want Dragon to have some like epic moments because so far he's the most wanted man. He probably has the highest bounty in the One Piece story. But fans are pretty much showing like all these other characters and their interactions and their battles with other top tier characters and pretty much good fighters. And pretty much they're saying so far Dragon has only interacted with Buggy and Smoker in the One Piece story. So I definitely feel like there's only one way to redeem it, of course, is that's in the current story. Dragon just goes up against the strongest Holy Knight, goes up against one of the strongest Gorosei, and even goes up against Imu, the king of the world. If Dragon does that, and Akainu, the history there, Dragon now being part of the Marines, there's a lot that we can do with Dragon and redeeming his reputation. Because like, a lot of people are looking at him a little funny, like they're giving him a little side eye right now. And then of course they talk about on the onset of the Great Pirate Era and the O'Hara tragedy, of course, Dragon being there on Roger's execution, and Dragon being there after the O'Hara incident to see the damage of it after the Buster call. That is the event. That event turned the freedom fighters, of course, into from 2 people to 3 people, of course, adding Kuma and the new name of the Revolutionary Army. Like, it's pretty much like a small pirate crew if you think about it, because they have their captain, who's a monster, and Monkey D. Dragon, and his 2 commanders in Ivankov and Kuma. And then if you think about it in the current story, now he's even like a Yonko crew, because I think Monkey D. Dragon is Yonko level easily. Monkey D. Dragon is not weaker than Luffy right now. That's a statement that people might be like shocked because we haven't seen a fight, but Luffy's Yonko level, and I think Dragon is Yonko level as well. I think that Dragon has Sabo, who's very powerful, a powerful Loki with advanced armor haki we've seen in the story, and did pretty good recently. We've been seeing Sabo do pretty good recently. And then, of course, I think there's also Karasu and Morley, who went up against admirals in Fujitora and Green Bull, which was pretty interesting. And then, of course, Kuma and Ivankov, the OGs. Yo, the Revolution Army is like a certified Yonko crew at this point that's just going up against the world government for all I care. I want to bring you guys back to the beginning of this One Piece chapter. What I'm talking about, of course, starts off 30 years ago when Kuma was 17 years old. And that number is a very special number to me because that's when Luffy started his journey in the One Piece story, the East Blue. He was 17 years old. Pre-time skip, Luffy's a 17-year-old boy. So whenever a character is 17, I think that's always connected to Luffy and related to that, and when it comes to perspective. And he's healing these old people from their pain by taking their pain away. And that just reminded me of Thriller Bark Odyssey, that iconic moment, absolutely nothing. And then they ask for more of this healing during the weekdays, but then Jinny comes in there, says fat chance, and says Sundays only. And that's obviously a reference to Christianity and church and going to church on a Sunday. Then, of course, she kind of reminds me, this Jinny character kind of reminds me of Nami, like the way she's acting, putting her foot down. They all call her a cheapskate, and of course they all think she's attractive. She's giving me Nami vibes right away, and I like her character personality, because a lot of these people get to understand, when people look at Nami like personality characters in anime and manga and think, oh, she's annoying, she's mean, everything. You'd rather a character like this than a character who's dry, who has no personality. That's why I like characters like Nami and this character Jinny. They're actually cool to see them acting out. Of course, don't get too crazy like what happened in Naruto with Sakura. Sakura was just pure out annoying, and she was annoying. I don't think that they've reached that level of annoying yet from my perspective. But yeah, I like this character, I like the personality. And of course we see that Kuma, they are pretty much hyping up Kuma, and he says, you're too kind, and she says, nah bro, you're too kind. So she kind of put Kuma in his place because he's giving too much compliments to other people, like, really, no, you're too nice, you're getting walked all over. And that's why I think Kuma really needed this character, because she can definitely put her foot down when he's getting walked over because of his kindness. You ever hear the saying, kindness can be taken for weakness? Don't take your kindness for granted. That's right here happening. Now that I got through a lot of the major plot lines in this chapter that I wanted to talk about, let's talk about some of the minor things I thought was pretty cool in this chapter, like seeing the king of Sorbet Kingdom, King Bakori, and he's hell-bent on paying that tribute to the, and he's just cold-hearted, of course, and he doesn't care about old people. He locks them up. He doesn't free his prisoners. We know Luffy talked about how he wants a world where everybody can eat at the end of Wano. So whenever you're starving people, it's always going to be someone like a bad character, because Luffy always talks about people eating. And it's crazy because how to say this, yo, that's the reason why they visit Kuma for free every week, these old people, because they're just suffering, yo, and Kuma is just pretty much their blessing in this situation. And then of course we see Kuma takes their pain away, and when they leave, wow, it was a Zoro Thriller Bark moment, yo. He is literally taking all their pain combined. Every single week he does this, and it just made us look at that. Like, this is why Oda's such a great mangaka, because he makes it look at previous epic moments even more hype. Like he's doing it recently when it comes to Ivankov saying, how could you forget my face, to Kuma during Marineford War. And then we saw in the God Valley incident that, oh, you don't ever forget my face, and Kuma says, I'll never forget your face. So there's things that Oda does that makes scenes that are already lit, he makes them even more lit. So that's why I like Oda as mangaka, and I really appreciate that. And this is Thriller Bark, Zoro, Kuma, that whole moment, he's literally doing that for the old people. And you see his, of course, his companion Jinny just crying, hearing Kuma scream in pain. That's something we really didn't see of Zoro too. They kind of hid it. Zoro had all that blood, and he was like injured to the next arcs, of course, all the way up to the time skip. Not like after the time skip, I mean like all the way up to the beginning of the time skip. But of course, we see in this situation Kuma screaming in pain, and he does this week after week. And if he doesn't return the pain, he explains his Delphi ability that it obviously it's gonna return to sender and haunt them. So that's crazy that if he doesn't take the pain might be a reoccurring thing for the people. The way that's why I took in the haunting word. Then of course he tells Jinny, sorry for putting you through this, I'll get tougher, so you don't have to worry. And that just even makes Kuma even look more like legendary. Yo, he is literally thugging it out for his people. You gotta respect it. Then of course we go 25 years ago when Kuma is 22 years old, so that's like around Zoro and Sanji's age after the time skip. Around Law and age, I think Law and Eustace Kid are around this age, I'm not too sure, don't quote me on that. But yeah, Jinny says let's get married, and we all knew this is Bonnie's mother, but yeah, this is where the confirmation happened in this chapter. Jinny says let's get married, he says nah, of course, and he's thinking about his mother and how she married a buccaneer, his father, and that got her killed, and he cried like he never cried before. So he has PTSD. He does not want to get married, not because she says it, you love me, of course, why you don't want to marry me? It's not because of that, it's because of course, literally Kuma has like mother issues. Like, it's messed up, but that's what it is. Yo, his mom died because she married his father, the buccaneer race, and he does not believe in marriage after that. That is what you call trauma. 25 years ago is also where Dragon got his first bounty poster. For context, Roger just reached Laptel 25 years ago. He just became the Pirate King and was a living man at the time. So just giving you guys hints that Dragon and Roger were doing things at the same time. So Dragon get his most wanted poster, Roger became the Pirate King. There is a chance that they could have interacted, I'm just saying it. Kuma calls Dragon a hero. Shout out to Nika and the whole story, how Kuma and his father all look up to Nika, the Buccaneer race, and says he wants to save people too as well. So I think it's cool because me and King Recon recently did a collab, and Recon talked about how he feels like Dragon was Nika to Kuma, and we get confirmation in this chapter that like pretty much Recon, you have called a lot of things right. I gotta get respect, and I gotta do another collab with him, yo, because he's calling a lot of things on this whole flashback. Then of course we gotta go 22 years ago, and Kuma is 25 years old. This is where he puts his foot down. He battles the royal army over them kidnapping and planning to enslave, and he does not mess with that because he used to be a slave. So he says, you're planning to enslave them, I won't let this pass. And he does one of his tried and true moves, his Ursus shock move, that of course I like it because he does it in a like a palm way, where like it's not really like the long, you know how Philip Barkley just comes on charging it up. And of course he did it in Middle Marineford too. This is probably one of the cooler Ursus shocks, but it's kind of minor. I thought it was pretty cool. We did it in Mary Jolas too, like a couple chapters ago against, and then I kind of had to stop him. But yeah, I like this move. It's one of my favorite moves, and he uses it. And it's because of this new law, of course, that is saying Southerners, you can do anything to them because they're not actually part of the kingdom. Yeah, this king is wilding, guys. And the king pretty much is cutting the country in half. And it kind of reminds me of Great Terminal, Luffy and Dragon, like home island. And because of course the Celestial Dragon tribute and the population of the country matters, and the king is pretty much like hating on this old folks village. Like the king is just wilding. And we see of course after the situation, Kuma's locked up, Jinny, and of course some people are thinking this is Bonnie's future crew. I'm not too sure, guys, don't quote me on that, but they of course got locked up too because they try to save Kuma. And Kuma says this country is in the brink of becoming a cesspool of bigotry and hate. And Jinny replies, the king is pretty much like a Celestial Dragon puppet, and if you go against the king, you'll be fighting the world government if you rebel. And this is where we start to see Kuma's true rebellion, because Kuma never really had true rebellion until this moment, until he's in prison and he has time to think about it. Before that, he was more for a peaceful, loving guy, just happy to escape his enslavement. So I thought it was pretty cool that Kuma, you see the transition of him changing his ideology. And we saw a similar with Dragon and the O'Hara incident and being at Roger's execution. So this chapter really made Kuma's character really developed. He's one of the more developed characters in One Piece. After this chapter, it's official. Kuma's one of the most developed characters in One Piece. And Oda, you did a great job. And it's making us more hyped for Dragon. I just want to see what Dragon is going to have in store. I want to see what Garp is going to have in store in his flashback. Roger, there's Roxy Zebek. Roxy Zebek and Dragon has so many synchronicities and patterns that are connected. So I'm telling you guys right now, Ichiro Oda, this is where you're a genius. People always like get hyped that the crazy chapters get so much, how to say this, like so much people watching and eyeballs on the series, but these chapters is why Ichiro Oda is the GOAT, honestly, to me personally. Like, it's as simple as that. I'm not even gonna argue it.